The asteroid hung in the black void of space, jagged and lifeless. Its surface was pocked with craters and streaked with dark dust that shimmered faintly in the distant starlight. On this cold rock, deep underground, a mine groaned. It was not a natural sound, but the relentless clanging of metal, the hiss of machines, and the labored breathing of the enslaved workers. Among them was Lyra, a small alien girl with pale green skin and hair that shimmered like copper in the faint torchlight of the tunnels. Her eyes, wide and round, were dull from years of exhaustion, but still sharp enough to notice every movement, every shadow. She moved carefully, dragging a heavy cart filled with chunks of rare minerals mined from the asteroid. Each piece was jagged and heavy, cutting at her fingers despite her gloves. She had learned long ago that mistakes were dangerous. One slip could mean a beating or worse. The overseers of the mine had no patience for weakness, and the other slaves knew better than to draw attention. Lyra's small frame made her easy to overlook, which she used to her advantage. She kept her head low, her steps measured, her mind always alert. The mine was her world. It had been her world since she could remember. She had no family, none she could call her own. They had been taken long before she understood what freedom meant. Now she was just another worker, another shadow moving through the dark. The tunnel ahead echoed with the sounds of labor, metal striking rock, the hiss of steam, and occasional shouts from the overseers. Lyra wiped sweat from her brow and adjusted the straps of her cart. She had been at this for hours, maybe longer. Time in the mine had no meaning, only work and pain. A sudden shout made her freeze. A group of enforcers, tall, muscular aliens with jagged teeth and harsh voices, stormed past, their boots clanging on the metal walkways. One of them swung a rod at a worker who had dropped a crate of ore. The worker flinched and scrambled away, but the rod caught his shoulder, leaving a deep red mark. Lyra shivered. That could have been her. Her mind drifted to thoughts she never allowed herself to have. The life before the mine. She remembered vague images of sunlight on a green planet, soft air that didn't taste like dust, and laughter, her mother's laughter perhaps. Those memories were fragile, like glass edges hidden in the darkness. She held on to them quietly, never speaking of them, never letting them interfere with survival. She continued moving the cart. The path was narrow, twisting deep into the heart of the asteroid. Sparks flew from the machinery as it chewed through rock, and the heat was suffocating. The air smelled of metal and sweat, a smell that clung to her skin and hair. She coughed, trying not to choke. She had long since stopped asking for help. There was no one to ask. At a fork in the tunnel, she paused. One path led to the deeper mining chambers, the other toward the ventilation shafts. Her instincts told her to stay on the main path, but curiosity, a dangerous thing, pulled her toward the smaller passage. She had learned that the smaller path could sometimes hold small treasures, crystals that could be sold to enforcers for extra rations or scraps of old machinery useful for repairs. Carefully, she stepped into the smaller shaft. The walls were rough and cold. Her feet slipped occasionally on loose dust, but she kept moving. The faint glow of bioluminescent fungi on the walls lit her way, casting eerie shadows that danced like spirits. She paused, listening. The mine was alive with sound, but in this side tunnel, it was quieter, almost peaceful. Then she heard it. A faint humming, low and steady, unlike anything she had ever heard. It was not the mine, not the machines, not the overseers. Something else. Her ears twitched. Her heart beat faster. She strained to listen. A figure appeared at the far end of the tunnel. At first, she thought it was another slave, but as the figure drew closer, she realized it was different. Tall, upright, and moving with a calm confidence. The figure wore a strange uniform, clean and bright against the grime of the mine. Her heart raced. Humans, rare visitors to this sector, were dangerous in their own way. Some came to trade, others to study, some to enforce laws, and very few to rescue. The human stopped a few meters away and raised a hand in a gesture of peace. His eyes were sharp but gentle, observing everything carefully. You're alone? He asked, his voice low but clear. It was strange to hear someone speak so calmly here. Lyra hesitated. Most humans had accents she did not understand, but his words were simple. I work, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, looking around. I can help. But you have to trust me. Trust. It was a word that Lyra had not felt in years. The last time she trusted anyone, it had been taken away from her, leaving only pain. She wanted to look away, to disappear into the shadows, but something in his eyes held her gaze. It was not pity, not curiosity, something stronger, something that told her she might be safe. I can't, she whispered. He knelt slightly, lowering himself to appear less threatening. I understand, but if you want to get out of here, to see the sky again, you will have to take a step, just one. Lyra's mind raced. Could she dare? Could she risk it? She had survived this mine by obeying rules, by hiding, by keeping her head down. Yet, for the first time, she felt a flicker of hope. Before she could respond, a harsh shout echoed through the tunnel. Enforcers. They were coming closer, their footsteps heavy, their voices angry. Panic surged through her. She knew what awaited anyone who was caught wandering off path. The human stood. We need to move, now. Lyra hesitated only a moment before nodding. Together they ducked into the shadows, moving quickly through the narrow passages. The enforcers' voices grew louder, but somehow they avoided detection. As they ran, Lyra's mind raced. She noticed things she had never seen before. Weak points in the tunnel walls, emergency exits, places where water pooled, hiding spots, in corners. The mind she thought she knew suddenly seemed full of possibilities. Finally, they reached a hidden chamber. The human motioned for her to rest. You're fast, he said. But you can be faster. You have more strength than you think. Lyra sank to the ground, breathing heavily. Strength. It was a word she had not used for herself in years. Her body was exhausted, but her mind felt alive in a way it had not since she was a child. Who are you? She asked finally, curiosity breaking through her fear. I'm Captain Elias, he said simply. I'm here to help people like you, people who deserve to be free. The word free felt strange in her mouth. She had only known chains, orders, and pain. But the thought of freedom sparked something deep inside her, something she thought had died long ago. Lyra looked around the chamber. It was small and dimly lit, but it was quiet. For the first time, she felt a strange sensation, safety, perhaps even hope. Captain Elias knelt beside her. You're not alone anymore, he said softly. I won't let them hurt you, not if we can help it. Lyra's mind whirled. Could she trust him? Could she risk stepping into something new, something unknown? Her instincts screamed caution, but her heart, buried under years of fear and pain, dared to believe. For the first time in her life, Lyra allowed herself to imagine a world beyond the mine. Sunlight on her skin, open skies, fresh air, laughter, friends, and choices. A life that was hers to live. The enforcers' shouts faded in the distance, but the mine still groaned around them. Darkness surrounded them, yet it no longer felt like a trap. It felt like a beginning. Captain Elias stood and extended his hand to her. Come on, he said. One step, that's all it takes. Lyra stared at his hand. One step. She had taken thousands of steps through this mine, but everyone had been a step in fear. This step could be the first step toward freedom. Slowly, she reached out. Her hand brushed his, and for the first time in years she felt a spark of trust. Fragile but real. The mine was still a prison. The darkness was still thick. But in that moment, Lyra realized something she had almost forgotten. Even in the deepest shadows, a spark of light could survive. Lyra's hand still trembled as she followed Captain Elias through the narrow mine tunnels. Every shadow seemed to move. Every clank of machinery felt like a warning. She had spent most of her life in these tunnels, yet now they seemed unfamiliar. Danger lurked everywhere, but this time there was a strange sense of purpose in it. Elias moved with quiet confidence, his eyes scanning every corner and exit. He didn't hurry, but he didn't waste a second either. Lyra tried to match his pace, dragging her small legs along the jagged floor. The mine had taken years from her body, but she had learned how to move quickly, silently, and carefully. "We need to be careful," Elias whispered, stopping in front of a grated door. "These mines have sensors, cameras, and patrolling enforcers. We can't risk being seen." Lyra nodded, swallowing her fear. She had never thought of the mine as anything other than a place of work and pain. Now it was a trap, a cage, and the walls seemed to watch her as much as the overseers did. Elias crouched and inspected the door. He pressed a few buttons on a small device he carried, and the metal grate clicked softly. Lyra's heart jumped. Technology like this was rare. Here, she had only seen broken tools, rusted machinery, and scraps of metal. Humans had a way of making even the impossible seem simple. "Come on," he said, stepping through the doorway. "This way is safer." The passage opened into a hidden chamber that Lyra had never noticed before. Dust floated in the air, lit by faint glowing panels along the walls. Crates and old tools were scattered around, giving the room a sense of being long forgotten. Lyra felt a flicker of relief. For the first time, she was somewhere no enforcer could find her quickly. Elias turned to her. "Do you have friends here? Other slaves we can help?" Lyra hesitated. Most of the workers had given up hope. They obeyed, survived, and avoided trouble. But she remembered a few faces, others who still tried, who still hoped. Small sparks of life in a dark world. She nodded slowly. "There are a few," she said, "but they won't trust anyone." "That's okay," Elias said with a small smile. "We'll take it slow. Trust has to be earned." They spent the next hours in silence. Lyra showed him the tunnels she knew best, the paths to avoid patrols, hidden corners where workers could rest, and places to hide if trouble came. In turn, Elias explained how they could use the tunnels to move unnoticed, how some machinery could be disabled quietly, and where the enforcers were weakest. As he spoke, Lyra realized something she hadn't noticed before. She understood these tunnels in ways no one else did. Her memory of every turn, every weak wall, every hidden passage was sharp. She could see ways to escape that the human could not imagine, and for the first time her knowledge felt valuable, important. Elias looked at her with a mix of respect and encouragement. "You're smart," he said. "You've survived here all this time. That takes more courage than most people have." Lyra blinked. Compliments were rare. Praise was rarer. She wasn't used to anyone noticing her, not really. Her heart thumped awkwardly. "Courage doesn't mean you aren't afraid," Elias added. "It means you keep going anyway." Lyra felt a strange warmth. She wanted to say something to tell him he was right, but words caught in her throat. Fear and distrust were strong habits. It would take time to break them. That night, as the mine's loud machinery rumbled above, Elias and Lyra huddled in the hidden chamber. The faint glow from the panels painted their faces in shades of gold and green. Lyra felt oddly safe. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she had to hide everything. Her fear, her thoughts, even a little hope. Elias pulled out a small device, a kind of map that showed the mine's layout. "We need a plan," he said. "We can't just run blindly. If we're going to free people, we need strategy." Lyra studied the map. Her eyes traced the tunnels she knew so well. "There's a ventilation shaft here," she said. "It leads to the surface, but it's narrow. Only one person can go at a time. The guards rarely check it, but if they do, they could catch someone easily." "That's perfect," Elias said, nodding. "We'll use it as the main exit. The others, we'll guide them there slowly, quietly. Patience is key." Lyra felt a thrill, a plan, a hope. It was fragile, like a small flame, but it was something she could hold on to. She realized she wanted to help, Not just herself, but the others trapped like she had been. She wanted to see them free. The next day, Elias and Lyra moved through the tunnels again, scouting, learning, and planning. They observed the enforcers, noting their patterns, timing, and weaknesses. Lyra's knowledge of the mine proved invaluable. She pointed out hidden routes, weak floors, and places to hide supplies. Elias listened carefully, occasionally smiling at her observations. "You know this place better than anyone," he said. "Without you, we couldn't do this." Lyra felt pride welling up. She had spent so long feeling small, invisible, powerless. Now for the first time her skills mattered. She wasn't just surviving, she was leading. As they moved, they passed other slaves working silently in the tunnels. Some glanced at them with curiosity, suspicion, or fear. Lyra recognized a few faces, workers who had lost hope long ago. She tried to smile, a small gesture, but most didn't respond. Fear had built walls around them, walls she had almost forgotten she had behind her own heart. Elias leaned closer and whispered, "They'll need time. All we can do is show them it's possible." The following days were filled with small victories. They gathered supplies secretly, memorized patrol schedules, and mapped every tunnel in detail. Lyra learned how to disable machines temporarily, how to create distractions, and how to guide workers without drawing attention. One evening, they encountered a young alien boy trapped under a fallen cart. The overseers were nearby, and time was critical. Lyra rushed forward, her strength and speed surprising even herself. She lifted the cart enough for the boy to crawl out, and Elias quickly helped him to safety. The boy stared at Lyra with wide, frightened eyes. Are you helping us?" he whispered. "Yes," Lyra said softly. "We're going to get out of here. I promise." Elias put a hand on her shoulder. "See? Courage isn't just about fighting. It's about protecting others, too." That night, as Lyra lay in the hidden chamber, she thought about the boy, the others, and herself. Fear was still there, a constant shadow, but something else had begun to grow, responsibility, purpose, and the first real spark of hope. But danger was never far away. The mine was controlled by ruthless overseers who punished any sign of disobedience. A single mistake could ruin everything, and though the tunnels offered hiding places, they could not hide forever. Lyra knew that one wrong step could mean capture, or worse. Yet she also knew that staying silent and obedient had not brought her freedom. If she wanted a life beyond the mine, she had to act. She had to take risks. She had to trust. The human, Captain Elias, had shown her that there was more to life than survival. That humans, despite being outsiders, could fight for justice, could teach courage, and could inspire hope. Lyra realized that she did not need to be saved by him. He was a guide, a partner. The strength to fight, to lead, and to protect came from within her. She made a silent vow. She would learn everything she could from him, not just to escape, but to ensure that the others trapped in the mine could also see freedom. She would take the spark of hope and make it a flame that no overseer could extinguish. The days passed, filled with planning, observation, and small acts of bravery. Lyra grew stronger, more confident, more aware of her own capabilities. The mine, once a place of despair, now felt like a battlefield she was learning to navigate. And in that darkness, the possibility of freedom began to shine brighter. Elias noticed the change too. "You're becoming a leader," he said one evening. "Not just smart, but brave, kind, and clever. You'll inspire the others. They'll follow you." Lyra looked at him, unsure. Could she really lead? She had spent her life following orders, hiding, surviving. Leadership was a foreign idea. Yet the truth in his words settled in her heart. She had already been leading, through knowledge, courage, and determination. She just hadn't realized it until now. As the mine rumbled around them, and distant machines clanged endlessly, Lyra felt something she had not felt in years: possibility. The life she had dreamed of in fragments, the sunlight, the open sky, the freedom was no longer just a memory. It was a goal, a reality she could reach if she dared to step forward. The mine was always dark, but to Lyra it no longer felt the same. Where once she had seen only endless tunnels and chains, now she saw paths, exits, and possibilities. Every turn of the corridor whispered of escape. Every weak beam, or unguarded, corner looked like an opportunity. It was Elias who had opened her eyes, but the courage to use what she saw, that came from her. For several days, Lyra and Elias worked in secret. They watched, they planned, they learned. The enforcers were loud, cruel, and predictable. Their heavy boots echoed through the tunnels long before they appeared. Their anger was wild but clumsy. They relied on fear, not strategy. That made them dangerous but also careless. One night in the hidden chamber, Elias showed her a small bundle he carried inside his bag. He pulled out strange tools and thin sticks that glowed faintly blue. "These are disruptors," he explained. "Small devices. They can disable machinery or lights for a short time. We'll use them to create distractions." Lyra leaned closer, fascinated. The glow reflected in her wide eyes. "You mean, make the machines stop?" "Just long enough for us to move," Elias said. "Or long enough to confuse the guards." Lyra touched one carefully, as if it might bite. She had never seen anything like it. To her, machines were heavy beasts of iron and noise. The idea that they could be silenced by something so small felt like magic. "You'll learn to use them," Elias said, handing one to her. "Start with this. Place it on a machine, press here, and then get away. Quickly." Her heart pounded. To use such a device was dangerous. If she was caught, punishment would be brutal. But when she looked into Elias's eyes, she saw no doubt. He believed she could do it. The next day, Lyra had her chance. The overseers gathered a group of slaves, forcing them to dig deeper into a new section of the mine. Sparks rained down as drills cut through rock, and dust filled the air. The noise was deafening. Lyra slipped away from the group, her hands shaking as she pressed the small disruptor against a panel near the drill. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, the machine groaned, sparks burst, and the drill screeched. To a halt. The overseers shouted in confusion. Workers froze, unsure what to do. The overseers kicked the machine, bellowing orders, trying to restart it. In the chaos, Lyra returned to her group quietly, her heart racing with both terror and pride. Later, when she met Elias in their hidden chamber, he gave her a rare smile. "Perfect. You did it." For the first time in years, Lyra smiled too. Not a weak smile of survival, but a true smile. Small, trembling, but real. Over the following days, their actions grew bolder. Lyra guided Elias through tunnels known only to her. They planted disruptors, sabotaged machinery, and created small delays in the overseers' schedules. The slaves began to notice. Whispers spread. Machines were failing more often. Overseers were angrier but also confused. Some slaves dared to hope, though they hid it well. One evening, as Lyra rested after a long day, a young alien girl approached her quietly. Her eyes were sunken, her hands bruised, but her voice held a faint spark. "Did you do it?" the girl asked. "The machines?" Lyra froze. To be discovered was dangerous. But she saw no malice in the girl's eyes, only hope. "Maybe," Lyra whispered. The girl smiled weakly. "If you can fight, maybe we can too." Lyra felt her chest tighten. For so long she had been alone in her fear. Now, someone else believed. Someone else dared. But with hope came danger. The overseers were not fools. They noticed the disruptions, the missing tools, the strange silences in the tunnels. Patrols doubled. Punishments grew harsher. Workers were beaten for even small mistakes. One night, as Lyra and Elias moved through the tunnels, they heard heavy footsteps approaching. Voices shouted orders, light beams cut through the darkness. "They're searching," Elias whispered. "They know something's wrong." Panic clawed at Lyra's chest. If they were caught now, all their efforts would be destroyed. She grabbed Elias's arm and pulled him toward a narrow shaft. "This way," she hissed. They squeezed into the shaft just as the patrol passed. Lyra held her breath, her body pressed against the cold rock. The enforcers' lights flashed nearby but didn't enter the shaft. Slowly the voices faded, the footsteps moved away. When it was safe, Elias let out a quiet laugh. "You're good at this." Lyra shook her head, still trembling. "I was just scared." "That's what makes you brave," Elias said. The days blurred together. Work, sabotage, hiding, planning. Lyra grew stronger, faster, more confident. She was no longer just a frightened slave. She was a fighter, a leader in the shadows. One evening, Elias spread a rough map of the mine across the floor of their chamber. He pointed to the ventilation shaft Lyra had told him about. "This is our way out," he said. "But it's narrow, dangerous. We'll need to move one group at a time. Quietly. If we rush, they'll catch us." Lyra studied the map. She knew every turn, every danger. "We'll need a distraction. Something big. Something that keeps them busy while we move." Elias nodded. "Yes. And I think I know how." He explained his plan. To overload one of the mine's main power generators. The overseers would panic trying to fix it, leaving other areas unguarded. It was risky. Very risky. But it could work. Lyra listened carefully. The thought of facing the overseers, of being discovered, filled her with fear. But the image of freedom, the open sky, the stars above, a life beyond chains, was stronger. "We'll do it," she said firmly. Elias looked at her with pride. "Then it begins." The first step was convincing others. Lyra approached the workers she trusted most, the quiet ones, the ones who still had fire in their eyes. At first they doubted her. "They'll kill us," one said bitterly. "There's no escape." "They'll kill us anyway," Lyra replied softly. "But this way, we have a chance." Her voice carried weight. She was not just a dreamer. She was someone who had acted, who had made the machines fail, who had given them moments of relief. Slowly their fear turned into curiosity. Then into cautious agreement. A small group formed in secret. They listened to Lyra's instructions, learned how to move quietly, how to watch for patrols, how to use the simple tricks Elias taught them. It was not an army. It was not even a rebellion, but it was a spark. One night the spark nearly died. As Lyra moved through a side tunnel, she heard a cry. An overseer had cornered a young boy, beating him for dropping a tool. Without thinking, Lyra rushed forward. She grabbed a rock and hurled it at the overseer's head. The stone struck true. The overseer stumbled, shouting in rage. "Run!" Lyra screamed to the boy. The boy bolted. Lyra turned to flee, but the overseer was faster. He grabbed her arm, his claws digging into her skin. She cried out in pain. Then from the shadows Elias appeared. He swung a metal rod, striking the overseer across the back. The alien roared and fell to his knees. Elias pulled Lyra free, and together they ran into the tunnels, their hearts pounding. Only when they reached the safety of their chamber did Lyra allow herself to breathe. Her arm bled, but she didn't care. She looked at Elias, her eyes wide with both fear and gratitude. "You saved me," she whispered. Elias shook his head. "We saved each other. That's what freedom means. No one left behind." Lyra stared at him, her chest tight. In that moment she realized something new. Freedom was not just about escaping the mine. It was about standing together, protecting each other, believing in something greater than survival. The mine shook with noise and fire. Sparks rained down from broken machines, and the heavy air was filled with shouts of panic. The overseers roared orders at each other, trying to fix the chaos that Elias and Lyra had carefully created. For weeks, they had planned. For weeks, they had waited. Now the plan had begun. The power generator deep inside the mine had overloaded. Lights flickered, alarms blared, and the great drills had fallen silent. The overseers rushed to repair them, leaving patrols thin in other parts of the tunnels, just as Elias predicted. "This is our chance," Elias whispered, his voice steady despite the danger. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. She stood at the front of a small group of slaves hidden in the shadows of a side tunnel. Their faces were pale with fear, their eyes wide, but there was something else there too. Hope. She looked at them, her hands trembling. For so long she had been only a worker, a child in chains. Now they were looking to her, waiting for her to lead. "Follow me," Lyra said softly, her voice stronger than she felt. "Stay quiet. Stay together." They moved quickly through the tunnels. Lyra knew every path, every turn, every shadow. She guided them with confidence, her fear hidden behind determination. Elias walked beside her, watching the rear, his strange, human tools ready in his hands. The overseer's shouts echoed in the distance, but the group pressed forward. Twice they had to hide as patrols rushed past, too distracted to notice them. Lyra held her breath each time, praying silently, her hand gripping the rough wall until her knuckles turned white. At last, they reached the narrow ventilation shaft. The entrance was hidden behind a pile of broken equipment, exactly as Lyra remembered. "This is it," she whispered. "The way out." The shaft was small, barely wide enough for a single person. Its metal walls were rusted, sharp in places, and it stretched upward like a dark throat. It was not safe, but it was the only way. "Go one at a time," Elias instructed. "Climb carefully, don't rush, we'll get everyone through." The first slave, a young boy, stepped forward. His thin arms shook as he pulled himself into the shaft, but Lyra encouraged him softly until he began climbing. The next followed, then another. Slowly the line moved, each person vanishing into the dark shaft above. Lyra stayed near the front, helping each worker into the shaft. Elias stood behind, watching for danger. For a moment everything went smoothly. The sound of climbing filled the tunnel, mixed with the distant chaos of the overseers still fighting the failing machines. Lyra allowed herself to breathe. Maybe, just maybe, this would work. Then a shout shattered the air. A patrol rounded the corner, their lights flashing. Across the tunnel, "Enforcers, there! Slaves!" one bellowed. Panic rippled through the group. Some froze. Others tried to climb faster, scraping their hands on the sharp metal. Elias stepped forward, raising a small device. He pressed a button, and a blinding flash of light filled the tunnel. The enforcers cried out, covering their eyes. "Keep climbing," Elias shouted. Lyra's heart hammered. She turned to the frightened group. "Don't stop. Go!" The slaves scrambled upward again, but more enforcers were coming, their heavy boots pounding the floor. Elias pulled out another device and threw it onto the ground. It exploded with smoke, filling the tunnel with thick, choking clouds. "We don't have much time," he shouted, coughing. Through the smoke, Lyra saw shadows of enforcers pushing forward. She grabbed a loose piece of metal from the ground and swung it wildly, forcing one of them back. Her arms burned, her body shook, but she didn't stop. Elias fought beside her, striking with speed and precision. His movements were controlled, practiced, unlike the enforcers' wild swings. Together they held the line, giving the others precious seconds to climb. "Lyra!" Elias shouted over the chaos. "Go, you have to climb now." She shook her head, swinging her metal bar again. "Not without you." More slaves disappeared into the shaft, their feet scraping against the walls as they climbed. But the enforcers were pushing through the smoke, their snarls growing louder. Elias grabbed Lyra's arm and shoved her toward the shaft. "You're the leader now. They need you. Go." Lyra's chest tightened. She didn't want to leave him. He had given her hope, taught her courage, shown her freedom. But she saw the truth in his eyes. If she stayed, both of them would be lost. If she climbed, the others would live. With a cry, she turned and pulled herself into the shaft. The metal cut her hands. Dust filled her lungs, but she climbed. Below, she heard Elias's voice shouting, Machines sparking, enforcers roaring. She didn't dare look back. She kept climbing higher and higher, her muscles screaming, her heart breaking. At last, light appeared above her. Real light. Not the glow of fungi, not the harsh lamps of the mine, but pale silver light. She pulled herself up and out of the shaft, falling onto cold rock. Around her, the freed slaves lay gasping, their eyes wide as they stared at the open sky. Lyra lifted her head. Above her stretched the stars, bright, endless, beautiful. She froze, her chest rising and falling rapidly. She had dreamed of this moment, imagined it in fragments, but the reality was overwhelming. The sky was vast. The air, thin but clean, tasted sharper than anything underground. The others wept, laughed, or simply stared. For the first time they were free, but not all of them. Lyra spun toward the shaft. "Elias," she shouted. Her voice cracked in the cold air. She waited, her hands shaking, her heart desperate. Seconds passed. The shaft remained dark. Then at last, a figure pulled itself out. Elias collapsed onto the rock, coughing hard, his uniform torn, his face streaked with dirt, but he was alive. Lyra rushed to his side, helping him sit. Relief washed over her like a wave. "You made it," she whispered. He looked at her with a tired smile. "So did you. So did all of you." Behind them, the freed slaves huddled together, their fear slowly melting into wonder as they stared at the stars. For many, this was their first time seeing the sky in years, or ever. But they weren't safe yet. From the mine below, shouts still echoed. The overseers would soon realize what had happened. They would send ships, soldiers, anything to drag them back. Elias struggled to his feet. "We need to move. My ship is hidden nearby. If we reach it before they find us, we can escape." Lyra nodded, determination replacing her fear. "Then we move. Now." She turned to the others, raising her voice. "Follow us. Stay close. Freedom is just ahead." The group rose, unsteady, but driven by hope. Together they moved across the rocky surface of the asteroid, the stars guiding their path. The mine loomed behind them, a dark wound in the stone, but they did not look back. Every step forward was a step into a new world. Lyra walked at the front, her head held high. She was no longer a frightened child, no longer a slave in chains. She was a leader carrying her people toward the future. The rocky ground crunched beneath their tired feet as Lyra and the freed slaves followed Elias across the barren surface of the asteroid. Above them, stars shimmered like jewels, scattered across the endless black. For Lyra, every step under the open sky felt like a dream made real. Behind her, the others whispered in awe, pointing at constellations, staring at the horizon as if it might vanish if they blinked. For so long they had been trapped in darkness, their world no bigger than the mines. Now the universe stretched wide before them, but freedom was still fragile. The overseers would come. Already distant roars echoed faintly from the mine below. They had little time. Elias led the group steadily, his gaze sharp, his movements confident despite the exhaustion etched across his face. "Not far now," he said. "My ship is hidden just beyond those cliffs." Lyra kept close to him, her chest tight with both fear and hope. She glanced at the others, seeing their trembling steps, their thin frames weakened by years of labor. They were free, but they were not safe yet. "Stay strong," she said softly, her voice carrying just enough to reach the group. "Every step brings us closer to freedom." The words gave them courage. Some straightened their backs, others gripped the hands of their friends, but all kept walking. Finally, they reached the cliffs. Elias guided them into a narrow canyon, its walls shielding them from view. At the far end, hidden beneath sheets of rock and scrap metal, lay a small starship. Its dark hull was scarred from travel, but its engines hummed faintly, ready to fly. Gasps of wonder filled the air. "A ship," one of the freed slaves whispered. "A real ship?" For us? Another asked, tears shining in their eyes. Elias nodded firmly. For all of you. This will take us far from here. Hope surged through the group. For many, this was the first time they had ever seen a vessel meant not for masters but for them. Elias pressed his hand to a panel on the hull. With a hiss, the ramp lowered, glowing with faint lights. Everyone inside. Quickly now, we don't have long. The group hurried aboard, their footsteps echoing against the metal ramp. Inside, the ship was small but warm, its walls lined with controls and seats. To the slaves, it felt like stepping into another world, one of safety, one of possibility. Lyra paused at the base of the ramp, staring up at the ship. She had dreamed of the sky, but never of flying among the stars. Her throat tightened. Slowly, she placed her foot on the ramp and climbed aboard. As soon as the last person entered, Elias sealed the hatch. Strap in, he ordered. It's going to be a rough ride. The freed slaves fumbled with the belts, helping each other, whispering nervously. Lyra sat near Elias in the co-pilot's seat, her hands clutching the straps. The ship's engines roared to life, a deep vibration that shook the floor. Outside, lights appeared at the canyon's edge, enforcers rushing after them. Shouts echoed as weapons fired, bright bolts slamming against the rocks. "They've found us!" someone cried. Elias's fingers danced across the controls. "Hold tight!" The ship lifted from the ground, rising with a sharp jolt. Bolts of energy streaked past, shaking the hull. Alarms blared. Lyra's heart raced, but she kept her eyes on Elias. His face was calm, his hands steady. He maneuvered the ship upward, engines roaring as the canyon walls fell away below. The enforcers fired again, their weapons flashing in the dark. One shot grazed the ship, sending sparks across the control panels. The freed slaves screamed, but Elias pushed forward. "Come on," he muttered through clenched teeth. "Fly!" The ship surged higher, breaking free of the asteroid's thin atmosphere. The stars grew brighter, closer, until suddenly the black of space stretched wide around them. The asteroid shrank below, its mine glowing faintly like a scar in the stone. We're in space," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. The freed slaves gasped, some laughing, some crying. For them, the stars were no longer just lights in the distance, they were a path forward. Elias set the ship on a course, his eyes fixed ahead. "We're not safe yet. Their warships will come after us. But I know a place, a human colony not far from here. They'll protect you." Lyra turned to him, her voice soft. "And you?" He glanced at her, a faint smile touching his lips. "I'll be there too." Relief spread through her chest, warming her even in the cold silence of space. Hours passed as the ship moved through the void. Slowly, the fear inside the freed slaves began to fade. Some slept for the first time in days, their bodies leaning against each other. Others whispered quietly, sharing dreams of what they would do with their new lives. Lyra sat in silence, staring out the window at the stars. She could not stop looking. Each point of light felt like a promise that life could be more than chains, more than fear. Elias joined her, sitting quietly at her side. For a while, neither spoke. Then at last he said, "You were brave back there. Braver than I expected." She turned to him, surprised. "I was terrified." He chuckled softly. "That's what bravery is, being terrified but still moving forward." His words sank deep into her. She thought of the moment in the shaft, when she had almost refused to climb. If she had stayed, everyone would have died. She had climbed. She had led. And now they were free. "I only had courage because of you," she admitted. "You showed me the stars." Elias shook his head. "No, Lyra. You always had courage. I only reminded you." For the first time she smiled. Truly smiled. Days later, the ship approached the human colony. It was a small world, covered in oceans and green forests, its cities glowing warmly in the dark. The freed slaves gathered at the windows, their eyes wide with awe. "It's beautiful," one whispered. Elias guided the ship down to the landing docks. As the hatch opened, warm air rushed in, carrying the scent of earth and water. For many of the freed slaves, it was the first time they had ever smelled such things. Humans in clean uniforms approached, their faces kind, their hands offering food, water, blankets. The freed slaves hesitated at first, but Elias nodded reassuringly. Slowly they stepped forward, their chains replaced with open arms. Lyra stood at the edge of the ramp, her eyes burning with tears. This was more than escape. This was a new beginning. One of the human officials turned to Elias. "We'll take care of them. They're safe here, but..." He glanced at Lyra. "She's special. We'll need her help to speak for the others." Elias looked at her. "It's your choice, Lyra. You can rest or you can lead." Her heart pounded. She thought of the tunnels, of the faces that had looked to her for guidance. She thought of the stars, of the freedom she had tasted. "I will lead," she said, firmly. "For them, for all who are still in chains." The humans nodded with respect. Elias smiled, pride shining in his eyes. That night, Lyra stood beneath the open sky of the colony. The stars stretched endlessly above, but now they no longer frightened her. They called to her. She was no longer a slave. She was no longer a child of darkness. She was a voice of freedom, a symbol of hope. And beside her, Elias stood, ready to face whatever came next. Together, they would fight for others still trapped, still waiting in the mines. Together they would bring light to the darkest places, for the galaxy had underestimated humans, and it had underestimated one alien girl who refused to stay broken. Lyra raised her face to the stars, her eyes shining. The horizon was endless, and her journey had only just begun.